Hello to anyone who is watching this Bible study after the fact. It's wonderful to know that you are following along, and we hope to hear from you or see you sometime. It would be great to have you join us in real time, but we also understand that not everyone can do that. So just delighted to know that folks are watching afterwards. All right, John is still joining, so let's get started. Anyway, if you are familiar with Rite 1 in the Episcopal Book of Common Prayer, which we don't really use that much anymore, at least not in our parish, some parishes do, you may remember this prayer, the prayer of humble access, which tends to be said right before communion. And here come Chuck and Jackie, so I'll wait for them.
This is the service I grew up with. So
yeah.
It still comes. I have to read the book in church now because I can't catch on to all this newfangled stuff.
It's newfangled stuff from 1979. My goodness. Hey, Jackie, glad to see you this morning, my dear.
Good morning. We're having technical difficulties.
It's going around. My wife is very slow this morning, and poor John has been trying to join for a while. I don't know what happened to him. He's out there somewhere.
Well, we're here.
Oh,
we may not be on camera, but we're here.
We understand. All right, let us pray. And if anyone wants to join in on this, please feel free. And I invite us to pray together if you would like. We do not presume to come to this thy table, O merciful Lord, trusting in our own righteousness, but in thy manifold and great mercies. We are not worthy much to gather up the crumbs under thy table. But thou art the same Lord. Property is always to mercy. Grant us, therefore, gracious Lord, so to eat the flesh of thy dear Son, Jesus Christ, and drink his blood, that we may evermore dwell in him, and he in us. Amen. Amen. Hey, John, how are you?
Okay, sorry to be late, but my Zoom on my very old computer was updating and never made it.
Does that right before. I know, mine does that too. And you're at the Bay. How are things out there?
It's nice, pretty. Lots of birds.
Oh, good.
If the birds are too loud, let me know and I'll mute.
Oh, no such thing.
Is there a such thing? Exactly.
I know. I love that. How's the sky looking? Is it really hazy?
A little gray now out here, but not too bad.
Good. All right. Well, I'm so glad we're all together. So we just began with the prayer of humble access, which for many of us is nostalgia. It reminds us of perhaps our first introduction to the Book of Common Prayer and the Episcopal Church. And the reason that, I forgot, let's see. Okay, first of all, before we move on with the reason I chose that, just to say I'm on vacation next week. So we won't do Bible study, but we'll pick up again on the 12th, which is hard to believe that we'll already be there, but I'll remind everybody. Anyway, the reason I picked this prayer this morning is this phrase, we are not worthy so much as to gather up the crumbs under thy table. And today we're going to begin, and Elin will tell me if I'm right about this. I believe we're picking up at Matthew 15:21 with the Canaanite woman. Is that right, Elin? It is. Oh, great. And so what I am going to suggest we do is read that paragraph, read that story, and then back up and take a look at some images and think about what's happening. If you remember from our conversation about the Gospel of Mark, in Mark's Gospel, she is called the Syrophoenician, same woman. So would someone like to just read this one paragraph for us? Before we do that, it begins with Jesus left that. Where is that place? Where was Jesus right before this? Does anyone remember?
the Pharisees were scolding him for not washing his hands.
Yep. Where was he physically?
Don't remember.
Came over and landed at Gennesaret.
Excellent, excellent. Which is just to the west of the Sea of Galilee, which is also known as Lake Gennesaret. So he's in the north, and we'll talk about that in a minute. This is a time where geography really plays into the story. So enough preamble for me. Would someone like to read this paragraph for us? So 21 to 28.
Yep, I'll do it.
Thank you.
Jesus left that place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting after us." He answered, "I was sent only to keep the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed from that moment.
Thanks, Mark. This story troubles a lot of people. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I thought it would be useful just to take a look at the map to see where we are. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You can't, it's not labeled here, but Gennesaret is right about here, right about the S on the Sea of Galilee. And then, oops, apologies. Okay. And then Tyre and Sidon, which is, okay. All right, I'm going to just, this is going to drive you all nuts. So let me do this. Okay. Tyre and Sidon is up here in the region, which is now what?
Lebanon.
And so what do we know about Phoenicia? So again, in Mark's gospel, she's called the Syro-Phoenician woman. What do we know about that area?
Certainly Gentile.
Excellent.
Was that colonized by the Greeks or?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, indeed, isn't that the home of the people who went to Carthage and all that stuff as well? I mean, they're almost a separate race, I believe.
Excellent. Yep. Excellent. So the area here in yellow is Galilee, right? So you see Nazareth and Capernaum, and it's over here. So this is the area where Jesus spends a lot of his ministry. And then you see there's Phoenicia, and you see in this map, at least, there's the border, there's the boundary. Okay. So I thought also it would be helpful, as we sometimes do, to look at a couple of images, artistic images of this story. I don't know if this is going to illuminate or not, but I often find it useful. So here's one. This is a student of Rembrandt from Rembrandt School. What do you all notice about this one?
He's turning away.
Yeah. Where's Jesus in this one?
The tall one in the middle.
Yeah,
One with the staff.
this guy right here. There's Jesus. So he's physically got his back turned toward her.
Pressure. You can say
Anything else you notice?
There's more than one woman in the group.
Yep.
Ah,
There is a woman behind him, yes.
right
And there's
here.
another one at the end of the group.
And I think, isn't she the one, the one at the far left? Isn't she the one that's begging?
Hard to
Probably.
tell sex
Mm.
if you're, unless
Yeah.
you're assuming that if you don't have a beard, you're a woman.
Mm.
Yeah, this is,
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure this is meant to be she right
Mm,
here.
mhm. But there's another one.
But
right
that,
in the
that
center.
one, you know, could be, he's got a belt and
Yeah, I'm not sure about this one. This one very clearly,
has a dress.
yeah. And we can tell from her body language what's she doing.
Pleading. Mm.
Yeah, she's pleading, definitely. And so some people are listening, but Jesus has set his face. He's turned the other way. His back is toward her.
So are they really listening? I can see some scorn, at
Yeah,
least in some of the faces.
yeah.
But
This
did
looks-
Jesus not making that statement to the other disciples?
156/78.
Okay.
Okay.
Say that again, Elin?
Is he not speaking to the other disciples in that conciliatory tone, you know, that I'm just trying to see where it is now, that he uses when he feels they're being hard on someone.
The fellow to his left, I think that's supposed to be Peter because he's bald and old looking.
This one?
That's a conversation that's going on.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And this one's kind of peering over his shoulder. This guy here is at least engaging her, whether,
Telling her to go away. Mm.
yeah, it's hard to know what he's saying, but maybe he's saying go away. Okay, we don't have to put too much pressure on this. And then here's another one from the 18th century. The European Jesus and woman. Anything you notice about this one?
It looks like she's begging for her dog.
Yeah.
It looks like Nancy's dog.
Major, that's right.
Major finally gets his due.
Exactly. Yeah, what's interesting about this one to me is that nobody's really, well, this guy's kind of looking at her, but Jesus is looking over her head. The other guys are looking at Jesus. Here she is, but the way the painter uses light and lines, you see the eye is drawn straight to her. And of course, she's pointing to Major there. Anything else you want to notice about that?
It looks like he's this is the point where he's saying, "Woman, you have great faith."
His expression is not a rejecting one. It looks like this must be the culmination of the story. I mean, where he actually gives in to her request.
Yeah, I think that's right, but he's not talking to her. He seems to be talking to the disciples and saying to them, "Hey, wait a minute, I'm going to help her after all."
Yeah, that's what I noticed as well, Mark. It's an interesting, it was a different representation than I had in my head, which is why I thought it was helpful. All right, well, we don't have to linger on this. So let's go back and look at the text. So what do you notice here? Does anything trouble you?
I thought very unsympathetic.
Yeah, I mean this
Send
line.
her away, for she keeps shouting after us.
I mean, this line about it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. That's pretty ugly.
It's pretty ugly.
It's one of the first cranky Jesuses.
I like that. Cranky Jesus.
I'm sitting here with the gospel parallels, and I think the version in Mark putting these together, might help a little, or it helps me a little about this this passage in particular.
Here's the
because
Markin version.
I'm sorry.
I put the Markin version up on the screen, so keep talking, please.
Okay, because in that one, it doesn't include his statement, I was sent for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He doesn't have that. But the statement when he talks to the woman is, let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to dogs. So putting those two together, it's the concept, look, I'm sent to the Israelis first. They get to be first. It would be unfair if I was, doing my whole mission to everybody at this time. And it takes away some of the sting of everybody else as a dog, at least to me.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, it's a very natural way of thinking. I mean, I know it's ugly, but it's very natural. We run into it now on the refugee and the immigration stuff. You're trying to deal with how to help refugees and immigrants in Montgomery County, and we hear a lot from Montgomery County political leaders. Hey, we don't have enough for our own people. You want to push these newcomers to the head of the line, and I wish we had enough housing, but we don't. And so that kind of reasoning is very common and very natural, and here Jesus is engaging in it.
Well, I wonder if he's doing that to make a point, because he's the Son of God. He has as much power as he wants. And witness the woman who just touches his robe and is healed. I mean, he has a nearly infinite source of ability to bless people, except for his human limits, where he just gets tired and has to go off by himself. So I think he may be trying to make a point.
And
Weren't
what
some
would
of
that
the
point be, Ellie?
I'm not really sure.
Let's play with it. Fred, you were
But
going
maybe he's encouraging
wasn't
her
the
to
woman
the next line.
It wasn't the woman he healed who touched his cloak, not a Hebrew?
It's another Gentile.
Yes.
And she touched his cloak, and he had no objection to that. This woman's problem seems to be that she asked first. Better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Yeah.
Donna,
No,
want to say something?
I just don't understand why he went to Tyre and Sidon if he didn't want to preach to those people.
Thank you.
That's a very good point.
True. That's what I wanted to bring up, and that's I don't know why that keeps doing that. That's why I wanted to show the map, because if I could just get it to stop. Yeah. So yeah, he makes a big point of going up toward the region of Tyre and Sidon. And what's that about?
He was taking his PTO.
He keeps trying.
I don't,
Which case?
it's but I mean let's see. I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I assume that there are Jews living in that among the population in Phoenicia as well. And he's carrying his message at least to them.
Okay, so it's not his intention. He's going up there, but it's not his intention to deal with the locals, maybe.
Yeah. And I mean, the story's been around longer than I have, and I've had time to ponder a little bit, but it seems to me, if you're looking at, which I do, I look at the human side of Jesus and try to focus on that and see this as a story of him having his mission revealed to him in an event. That this is not what he thought he was there to do, but there he is doing it. And we've all been in that situation where we find ourselves led somewhere to do something on a mission we didn't know we had.
That was
So-
beautiful, Ray. what I'm thinking about is, and I talk a lot about the incarnation, because for me, that's what makes Jesus distinct and why I am a Christian, this idea of God entering into human experience. And we tend to think about it in terms of, God revealing God's self to humanity through Jesus. Okay, God takes on a way of being, takes on, and so that we can understand God. However, I think it works both ways, right? Is that God in Jesus is learning about people too. I mean, how can that not be the case?
It's interesting.
If Jesus is, got boots on the ground, right, then it has to be some two-way communication. And when you just said that, right, it reminded me of that, okay, so let's think about what it really means, be sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And is it more nuanced than that? What do you all
Oh.
think?
I'm reminded in the Open Yale courses, the Old Testament lecturer, said the early parts of the Bible, of their Bible, was God continually being surprised, God making an assumption of how things would turn out and being surprised that people did something else.
Starting in Genesis, in the Garden of Eden, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
he said, don't touch this. And, sure enough, they touched it.
and you can kind of hear God saying, "Oi, what are you doing? Here you go again." Yeah, that's really interesting to draw that connection. Well, why? So thank goodness John's got his parallels again. We were lost without them last week. But so if Mark doesn't say anything about the lost sheep of the house of Israel, here's Mark. Why does Matthew?
Writing to a Jewish audience.
I wish I could get it so these two were side by side, and I'm sorry that I can't. So also notice that Mark makes a point of saying, now the woman was a Gentile of Syrophoenician origin. Matthew doesn't bother to say that. Maybe it's just assumed. But how does the woman address Jesus in Matthew?
Son of David.
Yeah. She calls him Lord. She calls him Son of David. Why do you think that is? Here in Mark,
Well, he's answering as somebody in the line of David, as an Israelite, saying the chosen come first.
And Matthew has her recognize that, right? It reminds me of the blind Bartimaeus story when he, the beggar on the side of the road going from Jericho up to Jerusalem, and he calls out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. So that phrase, it's saying something, and she calls him Lord.
So she's really heard all about him.
I think so.
Can do. So it must be widespread.
I think that's exactly right. Does Amy Jill have anything to say that would be helpful here?
No, she just says reference Mark 24 to 30 and see Kings 17, 8 to 24.
So what do you think about this exchange between her and Jesus? The disciples try to get rid of her. And again, in Mark, the disciples aren't playing that intermediary role, right? It reminds me of elsewhere when the children are trying to come to see Jesus and the disciples try to send them away. Jesus says, let the children come to me. So the disciples are, kind of his bodyguards. They're, his first line of defense. They're also annoyed that she's bothering them, right? And we don't hear that.
Sorry, there is something from in further down in Amy's book. The woman foreshadows the conversion of the Gentiles.
Hmm.
And Son of David, Jesus' Jewish messianic title.
Excellent.
Mm.
So she is acknowledging something about him and his beyond. As Fred reminds us, there were a lot of these itinerant wonder workers, right? He's different from them because she could have gone up to any of them and said, hey, you can heal, you can do these wonderful things, help my child. But she's very specifically using that form of address. That's great.
Well, of course, any of those others would have said, sure, that'll be
Give
10
me the
shekels.
shekels, right? Yeah. Show me the money.
Show me just like so many itinerant preachers are today.
It's true that. So first the disciples, ask him to send her away. She's bugging us. She's annoying us. And, you'd think they would learn that every time they ask him to do something because, well, they're not listening to us or, whatever. Jesus always goes, always sides with the people who are annoying the disciples. So
Be very contrary.
yeah. So
Makes a lesson out of it.
so here we have this exchange. She comes and she kneels before him. And Mark, I loved the way you read that when you said, Lord, help me. I mean, that was just powerful. I really heard it. And again, she's calling him Lord. What do you think about that exchange and the end of the story?
Lord would not really be that much, it's kind of like saying sir today.
What is the Hebrew there for Lord? What are they?
See, that's verse 25. Curios, like Kyrie, Master, Lord, title of it's a messianic title. Say, Lord, have mercy, Kyrie eleison. That's where that comes from.
So we don't get to the God sense of it until the third level of definition. So it's a secular. It's first a secular title. Okay, got it. Thank you.
What do you think about the exchange? So she's kneeling before him. She says it very plainly, about as nakedly as any parent seeking help would. Help me. And then we have this dialogue. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, she should go to law school because she can really defend herself. She came up with a good answer. And she's a woman.
Yeah. You think about all the boundaries that get crossed in this story, right? So there's that graphic boundary that I was showing on the map between Galilee and Tyre and Sidon, right? And then there's that, so then we've got Gentile and Jew, another boundary. And then there's the woman-man boundary. It reminds me, maybe it reminds you all too, of the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman. So it's like all these transgressions, all these crossings over. So she should go to law school. She's very persuasive.
Eddie, going back, the last discussion about Lord. Can you
Uh-huh.
bring up Mark? Because in Mark, she uses the term sir. And I don't
Yes.
know if that's a different one or if it's Lord as well.
So, okay, the footnote here says, or Lord. So this is Mark 7:28. Let me look.
28.
Okay, let me do this and see what it's. Mark 7:20. Okay. Same word.
Same
Culia.
word. Okay. I just said because my translation had him sir and Lord.
Yep, it's so always the right question to ask. That's when it gets fun.
Is there
Okay,
any hint here that maybe Jesus's ministry is not that successful?
say more, please.
Well, she's saying, the crumbs are falling to the floor. Obviously, the children aren't eating up everything. And, rather than let it go to waste, you might as well let me have one.
Mhm.
Yeah, the thing that jumped out at me after I looked at this the last few minutes is when Jesus says, "Woman, great is your faith." What is he talking about?
Yeah.
And because after all she said is, even the dogs eat the crumbs. So what's the faith that he's talking about? And it seems to me that the faith he's talking about is her acceptance of the priority of the children of Israel over the Gentiles. Once she sort of buys into that and says, "Yeah, I'm secondary. I come after your people," then he says, "Okay, that's cool. Once you've bought into that, then I can help you."
Oh,
And
that's really
that
Again, I would disagree, Mark. I take it as her recognition that Jesus's crumbs are so powerful and so good that they should even go to her. And that it's her great faith in recognizing him as Lord, Son of David.
Yeah, that his crumbs are worth begging for.
It strikes me that she is willing to, there's no pride in her, right? She's willing to beg. She's willing to say, "We are worthy not so much as to gather up the crumbs under thy table." She's acknowledging something. She's got some chutzpah, right? Because she doesn't mind arguing with him. And what has she got to lose? Her child is ill.
She's a desperate mom.
She's a desperate mom. Any of us who are parents would no doubt go to the mat. And so it's really interesting. And so was this all a test from Jesus? Because he's going to say, great, was he checking to see how far she would go? Seems a little sadistic to me. And I love Jesus, but he always annoys me. Always. It's like, oh, don't toy with her.
There's almost something. There was a Jack Nicholson movie where he was dating, he was OCD and had a waitress. He insisted on waiting on him.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's almost like, the HMO, that scene where she says the HMO has denied my benefits for my child. And, Jesus is saying, okay, we'll go and resubmit the paperwork then.
He comparing her to a dog.
Yes.
Like, I'm not going to give you the food because you're the dog and I came for other people. I came for the lost sheep and the children.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather feed my sheep than my dog. Wait a minute.
And then she comes up with a clever antidote and he decides that means her faith is great. So.
Well, it means that her faith is great enough to, as was said, to admit that, okay, I come in second, but what you have to give is worth so much to me, that I'll take any scrap that I can get.
Mhm.
Well, I like Patty's take on Jesus recognizing my mission isn't just this, it truly is, you know, and the human side of me recognizes it's going to go everywhere, ultimately.
He has learning experiences too.
Yeah.
And there's, and it's interesting because when he initially, and this is the line 24 that I always ruminate on. I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He doesn't say, no, I'm not going to do it. He starts with the parting line, right? This is why I'm supposed to be here. And then when his second response in 26, well, it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. True enough, right? If he is supposed to be focusing on Israel, then maybe it isn't fair. And yet he does it. So it, you know, it may not be what he came for or the official mission. It may not be fair, quote unquote. And yet he does it. And that's what always gets to me, is that he never once says, I'm not going to do it. He gives these lines that, you know, yeah, that's kind of what's expected. And then
I'm not sure the significance of this, but in that line that you just read, that starts, he answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He's described as answering. So who is he answering? Who's he talking to?
yeah,
I think he's talking to the disciples. He's
Then
not
what-
talking to, he's not talking to the woman. He's saying to his disciples, yeah, I sort of agree with you. You know, I was sent here only to help you guys.
yeah,
And so you'd think he'd be addressing that to her, to the woman, to explain to her why he's not helping. And yet I don't think that's the way the text reads.
I think you're right. And that's why I like this Rembrandt or School of Rembrandt etching.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah,
good.
he's having this conversation, and somebody, I think it was you, Ellie, identified this guy as Peter. And so they're having this debate, this dialogue, like, well, no, you know, I'm not supposed to be doing this. Yeah, I see that in that image.
I
Whoops.
think, one of the subtexts here is, why does he break the boundary? And it seems to be compassion.
Mhm.
It's just human compassion. Woman, you trust in me, you have faith in me, you trust in me so much, I am moved. I can't deny you.
And if we think about what the word compassion means, what does it mean?
Feeling with.
Yeah, suffering with, feeling with. So, you know, just again, entering into her experience.
Yeah.
It's a powerful scene.
Well,
and,
entering into a woman's experience as well, another boundary.
and a Gentile woman's experience.
Yeah.
So couldn't be more culturally prohibited, right? The only thing that would make her even worse, she had a flow of blood, and you know, that would really be bad. But truly, she is the other, and we understand that shorthand enough to see the significance of it. Well, would you be okay moving on? Let's bear this in mind, though, because this story is very much connected, not with this next paragraph, but with the last one. So would someone read this paragraph, Jesus cures many people?
Sure.
Thank you.
After Jesus had left that place, he passed along the Sea of Galilee, and he went up the mountain where he sat down. Great crowds came to him, bringing with them the lame, the blind, the maimed, the mute, and many others. They put them at his feet, and he cured them, so the crowd was amazed when they saw the mute speaking, the maimed whole, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they praised the God of Israel.
Thanks, Ellie. There's that theme of amazement again. That's a word that comes up over and over and over in Matthew. Amazed. And maybe we would think, well, should you really be so amazed at this point? But they are. Anything strike you about that little vignette? That interlude?
Just on that point, Betty, Mark calls it, they were astounded beyond measure.
I like that.
Like that. Well, it's interesting to me that the vignette talks about what Jesus did in the healing, and then it ends with the praise to the God of Israel, clearly, who is the actor.
Excellent.
It says he's passing along the Sea of Galilee. Does that mean he's back among the Israelites?
Yeah.
Yes.
So why did he go to Tyre and Sidon, just to talk to the woman?
I know. See, that's what is so. Yeah, because the Sea of Galilee. I mean, it depends. If he's on the eastern side, that's the Decapolis. That's Gentile territory. But it seems to me he would be over here, in the what's in yellow on the map, which is Galilee.
How
which-
far is that? It's quite a hike.
It's
Yes.
not an easy walk. Yeah, and again, the gospelers always say, oh, and then he went from here to here, and we lose sight of how long that might have taken and what the quality of that journey would have been.
It's halfway of the distance from Galilee down to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So can't be that terribly bad.
There's Jerusalem down there, way down in Bethlehem. All right. So shall we, I'm like my trigger finger is just off today. Okay. Shall we read this last section of chapter 15? Because I hear this is very much connected with the Canaanite woman. Would somebody read this paragraph for us? Please.
I'll read it.
Thank you.
Then Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for the crowd because they have been with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat. And I do not want to send them away hungry, or they might faint on the way. The disciples said to him, where are we to get enough bread in the desert to feed so great a crowd? Jesus asked them, how many loaves have you? They said, 7, and a few small fish. Then, ordering the crowd to sit down on the ground, he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and after giving thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And all of them ate and were filled. And they took up the broken pieces left over, 7 baskets full. Those who had eaten were 4,000 men, besides women and children. After sending away the crowds, he got into the boat and went to the region of Magadan.
Thanks, John. Is anyone having a deja vu?
Yes.
And
I
why
mean,
would that be?
that's what happened to those crumbs. I mean, the crumbs that the dog crumbs that the woman was gathering up, and now they've, what you were talking about with the parables and the theme of expansion, and you get the expansion in this one too. You're not just feeding the Canaanite woman, but the thousands.
Beautiful.
Well, didn't we just hear the 5,000 get fed? So
exactly. So this is a chapter before. So this is Matthew 14, which of course for us was weeks ago. In Matthew 14, he feeds the 5,000. And then here we are. He feeds 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And now he's feeding 4,000 with 7 loaves and a few small. But, wouldn't you think? So the disciples in Matthew 33, 15:33 say, where are we to get enough bread in the desert to feed so great a crowd? Now, in 15, they say, This is a deserted place. The hour is now late. Send them away so that they can go into the villages. Jesus says, you give them something to eat. And they say, we have nothing here. So, not the quickest studies, I would say. It's the same group. It's the disciples. It's like, hello. I love that, because are we not like that ourselves? You know, like, oh yeah, I know you did this for me then, but you know, here I am in this scarcity place now. So like, this is a completely different set of circumstances. I love that we have to hear it twice and they have to hear it twice.
Then he has to rub their noses in it in the next chapter.
Uh-huh.
I have a question. I mean, why is this done twice? And for John, was this done twice in Mark?
The answer, the second one is yes, that this tracks exactly Mark. Even the trip to Tyre and back is all directly in Mark.
It's very similar.
Must be on purpose. I mean, couldn't both of them lose track of what was happening?
Especially since Matthew is intent clearly on taking what works for him from Mark and then adjusting, editing things as he needs to. So the fact that he chooses to leave the second feeding miracle in suggests something. What I want to look at, and I didn't get a chance to do it before, is verse 37, the broken pieces. Let's see what the Greek is there. The birds, how lovely.
I'm sorry.
No, don't. No.
Oh, no.
Oh, please don't.
That's a feature, not a flaw.
Exactly. Like that. That's good, right? So the word in Greek for the broken pieces is klasma, a fragment, a broken piece, a remnant. Now, what I'm interested in is crumbs in 27. Let's see if that's the same word. It feels like it should be, but it may not be. Let's see. Nope, it's not. Sikion, a little morsel or a crumb. In our translation, it kind of sounds very similar, but different word. Okay, so much for that. However, to Donna's point, Donna, can you say that again about the connection with the crumbs? Because I really do think thematically those two stories are connected.
Well, the Canaanite woman pointed out that just as the dogs can get the crumbs from the master, that she's worthy to get the leftovers of what's left after Jesus takes care of those in the line of David, the house of Israel. And in both cases, her case, her faith entitles her to it. I'm not sure we find that in the miracle. It's almost like the disciples need to have more faith.
I just love it. Where are we to get enough bread in the desert? Where did we find? Like, you've got to be kidding me. And again, you know, Ray is really great about reminding us, and I always need to be reminded of this, that how did these stories start out? How were they communicated initially?
Always orally.
Word of mouth.
Orally, campfire stories. So if you're listening to this version of the gospel and you're sitting around and you're thinking, well, wait a minute, we just heard this. I think especially to hear it, it really brings it home. It's like, okay, and how might that be our story? And you can take that rhetorically, or you could actually answer it depending on how you're feeling. But I can tell you for myself, like, no matter how many times, my dear husband always reminds me that throughout my ordained ministry, so we're talking about 22 years now, there have been certain points, after 9/11 and with COVID and all of these things where I get to the point where I'll say, I don't think God is really calling me to this. This is just too hard to do. And no sooner do I say that than I have some major, neon sign or skywriting event that says, hello. And Randy always says he's never seen anything quite like it. But every single time I get to that point, I say, no, I'm not called to this. This is just, no, Jesus didn't really mean this. He was just kidding. And so for me, this is similar to that. It's like, oh yeah. Where we read, let me think, where could that be? But that's such a human response, I think. Or maybe it's just me.
Good. Betty, going back to the Canaanite woman as well, I mean, the disciples don't get it in terms of the abundance that can be. While the Canaanite, you can see the master at the table with his family, with all the kids and everything, and that there is abundance to feed the dogs, to feed everyone coming out of it. And she recognized that, the disciples don't.
Exactly. Beautiful. And even though they're two different words in the Greek, which really bums me out, I so wanted them to be the same. Those broken pieces that are left over, the so-called crumbs, the leftovers, the doggy bag, right? 7 baskets full. Well, we know biblically that 7, what does 7 imply? Lots. And it's also completion, right? Because how many days in Genesis does God take to create the world? 6 days, and then the 7th day is the Sabbath. So it's the complete cycle. So that number 7 would cue people to enoughness, right? Completeness. And so exactly, this is, the whole scarcity question gets turned on its head again.
The other story was 12 baskets, but that's the 12 tribes of Israel or something or other, some other significant number.
Yep. There are certain numbers biblically. So we know that 40 means a really long time. 12 is the tribes of Israel, the sons of Jacob, all of that. The number of disciples, of course. And then 7 is this number about completeness. And so these aren't, I don't think these are random numbers at all. But yeah, this whole question of scarcity being problematized, turned on its head. Like what we see as scarcity is actually, we have nothing to worry about. In God's economy, it's about abundance. There is enough. Anything else? I should look at that.
Well,
go ahead.
Can I go back to verse 31 there, where they praise the God of Israel? I'm looking at these crowd stories where it's not clear to me that all of these people in the crowd are Jews. That it's a multitude, and that just that little statement there, it's a proselytizing statement. A witness has been made to the Gentiles as well as to the Jews, and bringing them into the fold of Yahweh worshipers, for instance, because of the power of the miracles. I don't know if that's in there or not, but it feels to me like it could be.
Oh, I agree with you, Ray, because, and as we've seen in the previous story about the Canaanite woman, we look at a map and we see, oh, well, here's the boundary between Galilee and, but it's not like in the Holy Lands now where there's literally a checkpoint, right? So and clearly it's fluid. People are going back and forth. So to think that all the people going up the mountain with Jesus are from the house of Israel, there's no reason to think that. It's a permeable boundary. And
later,
go ahead.
Later I think it's in Acts, the Gentile God worshippers become very important as members of these congregations. They are the ones that finance the synagogues as well as actual Jews. So they're always there. They don't convert, but they are part of that community. And how did that happen? And maybe this is part of that story. I just don't know. But the God worshippers is something I've learned about and try to watch for.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Went to the synagogues as much, because I think they called them seekers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People for whom monotheism was attractive, but
Yep.
were prepared to go the whole circumcision route.
Yep, exactly. And so, and it's easy when we read these stories to think it's very cut and dry, black and white, right? Gentile, Jew, and there's the separation, but clearly not. And so this is I'm really glad you brought that up, Ray and Fred, because we have to think about it in terms of the polis, the whole community, that is much more textured, much more nuanced, and not just Israel.
Polis is a good word because Alexander the Great tried to Hellenize, this whole area.
That's exactly right.
And if you look at the list of the high priests, some of them had Hellenized names.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So there was a tension between the Jews who wanted to keep, to their own traditions and those who were willing to go to the gymnasium.
Yep. And we have to keep that in mind because, I mean, that's the reality of it. It's not nearly as clean cut as sometimes we think, or as some folks would want to think that, oh, well, here's the division.
Well, like the US and Canada, you might go back and forth across the border easily.
If
in my part of the country, it was Mexico.
Valid passport. Anything else we want to say about chapter 15? I'm so pleased that we read those 3 paragraphs, but this is a good chunk. This is a really important section. And again, there's no division between the chapters, so we can certainly go back in 2 weeks. So next time we'll be looking as a preview of coming attractions. In 2 weeks, we'll really look at the Pharisees again, and as that ramps up that tension. All right, wonderful discussion. I will miss you while I'm gone. Come to church.
Not a chance you won't miss us. You'll
I
have
will miss you.
That's part of a vacation, noticing that none of these people are around.
yeah, exactly.
People whom I love. It's like, if you're able and hear Frank Wade, you won't be disappointed. He's wonderful, and he's so charming. He's so funny, and so, I mean, he's really one of the best preachers you'll ever hear. So come to church, and I will see you. I'll be back in the office on the 10th, and I'll see you on the 12th for Bible study.
Thanks, Patty. Have a great vacation.
Thank you.
That was wonderful.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Bye,
We're
everybody.
easier to love
Thanks
if
all.
we're further away
Bye.
every once in a while.
What's that?
Said we're easier to love if we're not underfoot all the time.
A friend of mine used to say, "How can I miss you if you don't go away, Patty?" And I said,
Well,
"No, love to all.
Ciao.
Ciao. Bye."